Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the podcast, or if you're tuning in on YouTube, welcome to another video. I'm Vanessa and thank you for being here today and joining us on this episode of anger. So we're going to look at anger in all the different ways, all the different perspectives. I've recently processed some really old anger myself and dug deep down the rabbit hole to understand anger so much better and process it and look at it from all angles. And I'm sharing with you my experience here today. So I have to say I've procrastinated a little bit to put this episode up because my goal is always to give you like the eternal truth, and guess what? I realized that doesn't exist. I feel like truth is something that evolves over time with our consciousness and awareness level and how open our heart is to see and feel and witness the truth. So I had to realize, and maybe that's helpful for other creators as well, I had to realize that if I have something to say, I gotta put it out, because it's not that I do it for myself, but I, go through my own experience. And then I want to share what I learned because I think it's very helpful for other people as well. And with the current life events on a bigger scale in the world, I think anger is a big topic right now with what's going on. And I find it really important to make it a topic. I think anger has been a taboo for a long time. And I want to cut a little bit through the fear of taking in this topic. And so here we are. I'm going to share with you what I realized, what I know, what I've researched, what I've experienced. So let's dive in. Little disclaimer before we get started. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist, although I work as a somatic therapist and with people in the mental health field. But I just want you to know that this episode may be really triggering for you. So if you're gonna come, listen and watch, please come with a curious mind and an open heart. Take what resonates and let go of the rest. And if you feel like this topic could be too triggering for you, maybe skip this one and join the next one again. I leave it up to you. You're responsible for your own well-being. So go for whatever feels good to you. I made some notes because there are some specific things in here, so don't mind me if I sometimes look down on the notes. And we're gonna go real deep into it and look at it from various perspectives. We look at what anger actually is, where it comes from, why we need it, and how we can process it and even utilize it in our life, because anger is a really potent energy. We look at it from different interactions even. So that means from being the sender and the receiver of anger in interaction with our outer world. And before we dive in, I just want to also let you know that I have a very recent interesting story with anger, and I'm going to share my experience at the end of this episode, how I processed that old anger that I was dealing with. So let's go. So anger is a very potent and informative emotion. Overall, our emotions are basically messengers that are here to deliver information to us about our well-being, what causes us pain, shame, what causes us joy, and everything in between, right? So as many of us suppress our emotions, and that's completely normal if you feel like, ooh, this is me. Don't worry, it's a learning curve to learn how to get in touch with what we feel and express it in a healthy way. Yes, but as I said, as many of us still suppress our emotions, we often miss the message that they send us, right? So if we get angry, there's a reason for it. Your emotions are always valid. It's just about understanding where they originate from. So anger informs us when our boundaries are being crossed. Basically, when we feel threatened. And I would categorize anger in two different kinds. One is situational anger and one is historical anger. And I know there are a lot of people saying there's healthy and unhealthy anger, but I do not agree with that. I feel that any anger is healthy to feel, The thing that can be unhealthy is how we express what we feel, right? But this is with every emotion. There is a healthy way of processing and expressing, and there's an unhealthy way, meaning something that can be harmful to ourselves or to other people, or both, right? So I believe it makes sense to categorize anger in historical anger and situational anger. So the simplest form of anger is situational anger, because let's say someone comes up to you and stands right in front of you. Yeah, you cannot move because there's a wall behind you, and you feel uncomfortable. You start feeling like threatened and that this is not good for you. So you ask them kindly to take a few steps back. Let's say they're not doing it. So what would be healthy if anger comes up in this situation? Because obviously you feel threatened and like helpless, because there's nothing else you can do, right? So you're sort of forced by them to find a different solution than them supporting you and taking a step back. So that gives you a clue about your boundaries being crossed and your needs not being met, right? Boundaries crossed, needs not being met. But as it is only in this situation, after the situation is solved, you may say like, oh, what a douche or whatever, right? You will forget it again, and you will not like hold on to that emotion, right? It will dissipate and it will not have a bigger role in your day or in your life. Like in the car, you're gonna be like, bang, or whatever you're gonna do, you know? But this is not, you're gonna step out of your car and you're gonna like forget about this moment again. Situational anger. That's quite simple, right? And that is also healthy to feel. Now, maybe you're gonna think now, I shouldn't be angry in that situation. If anger comes up, it's totally okay. It just shows you that your boundaries are crossed and that your needs aren't being met in that very moment. Yeah, and allowing ourselves to feel that anger then just gives you that clue. What I like, what I don't like, what works for me, what doesn't work for me. Yeah, that's situational anger. And again, here there are healthy ways to express it and there are unhealthy ways. So we never want to harm somebody, and we never want to harm ourselves either, right? Sometimes there may be you feel like you get out of control with your anger, or you suppress your anger. That can give you clues that this is not just situational anger, that there may be a history of you not knowing how to regulate your emotions or how to even feel your emotions, right? So one or the other extreme. Feeling it and processing it in a healthy way, you could say, is in the middle. That's the balanced way of dealing with our emotions. But if we haven't learned to regulate ourselves, if we haven't learned to be and feel our emotions and be in a healthy control of it, to not leak out or explode or suppress our needs and feelings, then we're gonna have to do some work getting to that balanced place. And so we have the situational anger, which is really just based on our boundaries being challenged or crossed in the moment. And we have historical anger. So historical anger stems from a one-time experience or a series of experiences in the past that crossed your boundaries in some way and that created a wound that still is active within you. And this wound can be triggered in everyday situations, but instead of just reacting to the situation at hand, we often react unconsciously to the pain in the past. So that's why we may react to a small situation in traffic in a magnified way, right? So if you notice yourself getting intensely activated, that may give you a clue on your reaction stemming actually from a past experience or an older wound that may have caused a rupture and trauma within you. So when this old wound is triggered or activated, the emotion will not easily dissipate, right? It will be in your head, you will stay activated all day long, you will have a hard time getting over what happened, even though it was just a small situation in your day. So here's what happens in your body. Our sympathetic nervous system gets activated, which means we enter survival mode. Based on our personal experience and your wounding, that means either fight, so you may get aggressive with your words or your actions, or you flight, so that means you want to run away from the situation and get out of there, or you may freeze, so that means you may be unable to actually react or move even. You may have a hard time giving any response to the situation, or you may fawn. And fawn is you may people please, you may laugh in the situation awkwardly, or you may reassure the other person that got you angry, or find a way to smoothen that situation, although your boundaries are being crossed or your needs are not being met. So how do you react when you get triggered and when you get angry? Do you fight, flight, fawn, or freeze? That's very interesting to look at, to understand your response to anger within you. So to really get to the bottom of our relationship with anger, we got to take it all the way back into childhood, because how our parents or caretakers taught us to be with anger is most likely how we deal with it today in our adult lives. So when you grew up in a household with mature parents, you're more likely to, now as an adult, be able to communicate your emotions and also balance out how you feel, right? Like regulate yourself in a way. That often happens when we grow up with parents that are mature adults and that are able to hold the space for you to experience your emotions, to experience how it feels to be sad and disappointed and angry, and they will be able to allow yourself to experience those sensations in your body and your mind and emotionally in a contained way. So what contained means in this case is in a safe way, where you are able to live out those emotions, but without harming whether yourself or other people around you. Yeah. And as you get to test your boundaries with feeling and expressing your emotions, and your parents holding the space and telling you what is okay and what is not okay to do, you develop safety within yourself, right? And you will be able as an adult to feel emotions, especially the strong ones like anger, come up, and you'll be able to hold the emotion without like spilling on others, right? Or without even having to suppress them. And why is this important to learn? Because when this emotion of anger comes up within you, you notice it, and you will be able to communicate to create safety and boundary between you and what's going on. So you may be able to say to someone you are in conflict with, whoa, that's a lot right now. I need a minute. I need to go outside and then we can talk. Let me call you back. Okay? Or you may be able to tell somebody, whoa, this is not okay. I don't want you to communicate to me like that. Or any other way. Or you will be able to say, look, I'm really angry at you now, and it's really hard for me right now to have a normal conversation with you. Let me just go outside and feel this, okay? Whatever situation you're in, you will be able to, make a educated decision and a mature decision, yeah? And if you haven't learned this in childhood, so let's say either your parents have been overly aggressive and overly expressive with their anger themselves, then you may have learned that, oh my God, like being in conflict is dangerous and scary, and I'm gonna avoid it at all costs. So you may learn to people please and tell people, it's okay, don't worry, I'm gonna be okay. But inside you feel like, oh no, you need to shrink or something like that. And if you learned in childhood that anger is shameful, so your parents may have not allowed anger to come up at all in your household, then there may be an undertone of dissatisfaction or this neediness to be nice all the time. And that may create the opposite effect, right? There may be resentment coming up inside of you. There may be this passive aggressiveness that you may or may not notice within yourself, and any other, way it may show up for you. It may even happen that you have outbursts of anger that come suddenly and you're not able to hold and control your emotion, although you are an adult, right? And that all comes from immature parenting. And please don't get me wrong, this is not a judgment on anybody. I think our parents do the best that they can with the tools that they have themselves, because let's also for a moment go into ancestral healing here. Look at how your parents raised you or behaved, or any other caretaker that you grew up with. If they haven't been maturely parented, or they haven't learned how to regulate their emotions, how will they be able, if they don't look at it through this healing lens, how will they be able to teach you something else, right? So it's kind of, you need a high level of consciousness to go into that and say, oh wait, I have a shadow here, or I'm having a block here that I need to work on, so I don't give it further to my children and children's children, right? So I think one important thing I myself learned is that it stops with me. I don't want to give forward any passive aggressiveness, any anger, because it's just a sign of me not having my needs met and not communicating my boundaries. And I don't want this to sound confronting for you, but it may be, yeah. And it's as we are adults, it's always a chance to take responsibility over what we have and haven't received. And my teacher said to me a few weeks back, because when all this old anger came up for me, which is not from a situation right now, it was triggered from a situation right now. But how I knew it was not situational anger itself is that it felt overwhelming to me and that it came out in the wrong way. And just know that it's okay that that happens. Yeah, we are humans, we make mistakes. It's just important that we take responsibility over it and make sure we don't harm anybody with our outburst. And this piece of responsibility taking is essential, because we are not children anymore. We are not helpless. We can go ask for help. We can find ways to help ourselves. There's so much content out there, so much opportunity, possibility. And I think, especially if you're somebody who wants to have children, it's so important to get into this topic of anger and look at it, yeah? Because it's really a displaced way of protecting ourselves. If it's historical and we're trying to suppress it or overly outburst on it. So just to summarize this piece, if we don't grow up with parents that are mature enough to support us in experiencing and practicing managing, processing our emotions, then at the adult stage, it's on us to really get into this and take responsibility. Because like we said in the beginning, anger is a potent emotion. And if we suppress it, there will be consequences. And if we spill it out, there will be consequences, right? So I think this is a really important point of how to navigate this and take responsibility. And I think this is also something that a lot of people are missing in this new age spirituality container, where it's all about love and light and everybody is allowed to be how they are. And yes, this may be a part of it, but we do have to look at our deficiencies, and we do have to look at where we've been undernourished as children and reclaim this nourishment. Because if we don't, we never will feel worthy of the life that we dream of, or of receiving just the base level nourishment of love and affection and salary, or however you earn money, these basic life things. So if you're struggling with health, with money, with romance, with all these things, look at how your needs are being met, or how as a child you've been parented and how you reacted to that parenting, right? Like, did you get your needs met? Were you able to voice your needs? Have you been heard or not? And if we haven't, there's so much emotion and resentment that can get buckled up within us that we may be so used to feeling that we don't even see it, right? We may be so used to being treated or behaving and living in a certain way that we don't notice what we need. That's why I'm saying that anger is a cover emotion, because it's easier to feel anger than grief, right? Maybe for some of us not. Maybe for some of us it's easier to feel sadness and despair than it is anger, because you've just learned that there's so much shame around anger, and I think shame is one of the hardest emotions that we could allow ourselves to feel. If you feel sadness and despair and disappointment and all these things, but you don't know how to let yourself feel anger, then just know that there's a possibility that there's a lot of shame around anger. And it may help you to journal out about your relationship with anger and your parents' relationship with anger, and just, open up that topic a little bit. You don't have to do it all at once or all in one day, but just get started, because I think it will really enrich your life to look into this topic and uncover what may be in the depth hidden. And like I just said, for some of us it's easier to feel anger than to feel what's actually underneath, because what's underneath may be a lot more painful. And I'm just going to give you an example of, let's say a loved one dies in a car accident and the other person of the other car survives. In that moment we may be in shock. So we won't be able to deal with all this grief and all this sadness that's coming up of not seeing that person again. So our mind is very clever, right? So in order to protect us and deal with this helplessness that we're experiencing, we're trying to feel something, and we're gonna attach anger to that other person that survived. Yeah, until we are ready to actually feel and sit with our emotions of loss, grief, and sadness. Just to give you one example. So if you're feeling a lot of anger, sit with it. It's really so essential to sit with it. I know people tell you to shake it out and all these things. And that can be helpful, especially in a moment where you are with other people and you've got a job to do, or, you cannot tend to your emotions in that very moment. Then it's really good to, go to the bathroom and shake it off or something like that. But it's so important to actually come back, take time, sit with your anger. And you don't have to do crazy things in order to sit with your anger. Sit with the emotion. Think of a situation that made you very angry. Sit with the emotion and really take time to feel it through. Maybe put on some music that supports you in opening up to emotion. I know it's not so easy for many of us to get to the emotion, but it's really important to feel it through, let it come up, and maybe even journal out about that part of yourself that is afraid to feel anger, or the part of yourself that is very angry. Yeah, because that can sometimes help us to sort of not dissociate at all, but to see that part as a separate entity from us in order to better look at it, either through the mind's eye or emotionally, and feel, how does this part feel? Yeah, they may be angry because they didn't get their needs met, they weren't heard, whatever it is for you, yeah? And sitting with that anger, I can just repeat it because it's so important. Listen to that part of yourself, make space. And sometimes it will be hard the first time around, but make it a practice. Whenever you have time, put on some music that supports you, sit with yourself and allow that part that's angry to come up. Or if it's very hard for you to bring up that anger, talk to that part that protects the anger, that avoids or suppresses the anger. Ask it like you ask a friend. Hi, thank you for supporting me. Why are you suppressing the anger? Do you want to protect me? Did you learn that anger is not allowed? How do you feel about anger? And I know that sounds really abstract, but for me and my clients, it always works, because it's just such a good way to personify, because personifying is often a good way to gain some distance and not feel too attached to the answer of what that part may feel. Okay? And another reason why it's so important to feel your anger, it's life force energy. Because if we don't feel our anger at all and we suppress it, we will suppress the energy levels that we have access to in our life. And if we get stuck in anger, so that means we never get out of the anger loop and we're always getting back to the same point, that also takes away energy from us. So suppressed anger or held anger may show up in the body as high blood pressure, constant migraines, lots of pressure on the eyes or in the jaw, right? It can also be that your jaw feels very tight all the time. Emotional anger is often the source of physical ailments, right? So if you have any persistent physical issue, it's worth it taking a look into suppressed or held anger, because it could potentially be the source or contribution to your physical pain. With any emotion that you feel stuck on or that you feel like you cannot feel through or access, it's so important to close that loop and finish feeling through an emotion, because this is how you learn your need. This is the message of the emotion that you're feeling. Yeah. So that's very important. And where your anger comes from, that life force energy that I mentioned, it's also where your sensuality, creativity, all the potent emotions that we can feel come from. And so it's very important to open that channel. And in the beginning, it can feel very painful. It can feel even very scary to allow yourself to feel that anger. I know this from myself. When I allowed myself to fully open up that channel and feel that anger through, the way that I felt and the thoughts that I had really started scaring me. But, in that situation, if you're not equipped to do that on your own, it's really important to seek out support from any practitioner or therapist that you trust. Somebody who can hold your hand or be there with you and guide you through it so that you feel safe and held in that process. Because if you haven't been feeling safe and held, experiencing your emotions growing up, it's especially important that now you ask for help and that you change your experience and heal your experience that you've had as a child. So now take responsibility and ask for help, really. And when I went through this heavy feeling of anger and all the thoughts connected to it, I had a moment where I thought like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. But if you just let it float through you and you decide to not entertain any harmful behavior or anything like that, then it's very powerful. Because after feeling all that anger through for me, I felt so light. I felt like, wow. So let me tell you a little more how I brought my anger up. After I noticed that there was a lot of anger within me, I sat myself down and tried to feel into the anger. I put some music on. I allowed myself to get sad and angry, connecting to a situation that made me feel very activated and angry. And I just let this come up. I felt into the parts of my body that had the strongest sensations, and I even felt like some shaking, and I let it all happen. And after the anger came up, I felt really hot and a lot of emotions, a lot of tears coming up. And I just let it run through me. I didn't try to stop the emotion. And that felt really good. And then afterwards I was taking a walk to just, integrate a little bit. And that feeling of anger was still very present. So because I opened that channel, I just allowed myself to let it be in me, let it be open, but not spill out on other people. So if you feel like, okay, I need to really process that anger, make sure there's nobody around you that could be harmed by you processing anger. Sometimes it's maybe even good if you just take a couple of days off or let the people you're living with know that you're in a very sensitive state, and that it would help you a lot to not have difficult discussions. Warn them if you trust them, okay? And yeah, I let this anger live within me and just didn't try to suppress it or to spill it out. And then I felt like it did suppress a little bit again. So what I did was another day, just lay myself down and do an hour of breath work. So I recommend you not to do that by yourself if you're not experienced or if you're not a practitioner. Find a practitioner to help you work that through, because it's not safe if you're not experienced in it. I'm just telling you from my practitioner perspective what really helped me, and the breathing really helped me to open up and feel through. Because as I said, anger can often be a cover emotion. And after processing through with my breath all the anger, I felt a lot of grief coming through. I felt a lot of grief coming through, and it felt kind of like I was processing the anger through my heart. It's a very cathartic experience and a sort of spiritual experience that I have, and which is not uncommon to have with breathwork. Because I was breathing and feeling that anger, and I suddenly felt like processing it through my heart, and the deep desire not to harm anybody else with that anger. Because suddenly that anger that I felt turned into the pain that I felt receiving anger in my childhood. I felt this deep pain, and I let this float through me with my breath. And I started, having a lot of grief come up. Grief for like my inner child, for that part of me that felt helpless, that often felt like, if I say something back now, I won't be heard or something like that. So I let my inner child grieve, and I let it flow through me all. And what I realized in the end, that all that I'm going to speak in third person because that's what we do in parts work, just to make it clearer that it's my inner child and not the adult Vanessa that was fully absorbed in that grief. Obviously it's a part of me, so it is me. But I think the third person always helps to look at it from a different perspective. So that part of me, that inner child part of me, really grieved heavily. And what she needed, the need that suddenly came out after dropping the layers of anger and pain and grief, was the simple need of wanting to be reassured, wanting to be accepted, wanting to have my needs met, wanting to be loved, for who I really am, without having to perform. And it gets me quite emotional thinking of it. Let's take a little breath here. Obviously, when we experience a breakthrough of understanding our internal world in a deeper way, the need that we often have is very simple, basic, naive. It's one of those needs that every human being has. But if that need hasn't been met, it still lives within you, and it will be activated like a child is activated. Yeah, you may throw tantrums because your need is not met. So you're acting from that place of that 5, 4, 6-year-old child, whenever that experience for you happened, whenever that wound was created. So that was very powerful for me to feel that need. And then I kind of imagined to hug my inner child and just let her know that she's loved exactly the way she is, and that this reflects in my adult life, that I have loving friends and amazing people that see me and love me, and that I embrace myself more and more and love myself more the way I am. This is vulnerable to share, guys. And that was really important. It was a really important moment. And, then I was suddenly grateful for the anger. And anytime going forward, when I had anger come up, it didn't feel so intense or overwhelming anymore. Because I suddenly knew it was just this part of me coming up, wanting to be heard and seen and loved. So once you break that shell and you understand your own need, you can take action in your life to meet that need. And not from a self-righteous place, not from an egoic place, but from a really honest and loving place. I think this is really important to say, that it comes from a very honest and just bare, natural place. Because today, often in this idea of New Age spirituality, especially for anyone who identifies as a woman, right, that we're allowed to feel our emotions and all that, and that's true. So I'm glad that people start more and more to allow themselves to feel their, let's say, darker emotions like anger. And dark not as in bad, but dark as in deeper rooted, yeah? Like not as easy and light to feel. Anger is a potent emotion, just to say it again. And so it is a darker sort of texture, right? And it's good that we start allowing this emotion to come up more and not be such a taboo. But I think a lot of people also get stuck in this self-righteousness of the anger. And that just shows that it's not fully processed through. For example, this like, bitch, you don't have to tell me anything. I'm really bad at personifying that. But I think you know what I mean. And, you know, it's not coming from any bad place or something. But I just want to say that often self-righteousness is a step before this integrated state of honest anger or honest feeling what is below the anger. Yeah, realizing the need below the anger comes. So if you're in the state of self-righteousness, just know that's totally okay, but then focus on feeling the anger through and understanding what is the wound beneath it, because it will really help you come to a more peaceful, integrated state and get you actually where you want to go. Because just being stuck in anger and feeling it, it's kind of like, it's not a satisfying place to be in, right? It's good to feel that capacity of anger, but if you are at the mercy of it and you're not able to feel it and process it and come to it from a mature place, then it owns you, right? And you will have moments where the anger is so strong over days and you can't get out of it. That's painful. That's more painful for you than whoever the anger is directed at. Yeah. So as adults, let's own our anger. Let's find ways to process it, sit with it, feel it first of all. Before you find or before you go into the place of, I need to understand my anger now. Where does it come from? What does it mean? And all that. No, just sit yourself down. Love your anger, feel your anger through. And all the realizations, they will come automatically. You don't have to work hard to get the realization if you allow yourself to feel the anger. And I also want to say that if the idea of allowing your anger to come up scares you, just know that it's a practice. So it's kind of like you're learning to feel more sensation. Yeah, and it can feel scary because maybe you never felt so much, so intensely before. But if you weren't equipped to feel that, the emotion of anger wouldn't exist. So you're definitely equipped. And again, find someone to support you through this learning process and this expanding your capacity process. If you don't feel safe to do it by yourself, always ask for help. This is really something that's important, especially with intense emotions like anger. Okay, so I did ask you on Instagram because I was really curious about your relationships with anger. So I just want to go through the answers with you because I think it's helpful to hear how everybody else feels about anger. So my first question was, do you allow yourself to feel anger when it comes up? And 68% said, yes, I can't not feel it. So I think it's good. It's a good number of people who allow themselves to feel that emotion and have the awareness that it is anger, right? And 32% said, no, that's really hard for me. So we talked through this episode and gave some examples of how you can get in touch with your anger. So maybe try a few of those and let me know how you feel with it. I know that it's hard to get started, but if you practice, I'm sure you get there. Sometimes it also helps to see, what is my shame with anger? And maybe if you have a partner or a good friend, you can ask them, hey, did you ever notice me getting angry? Or did you ever wonder why I didn't get angry? Or how would you react if I told you, hey, I'm really angry at you? So, communicate also, because this is again coming back to your needs. What are your needs? And if you have safe relationships around you, there should be the possibility for you to open up and have that conversation and say, look, I really need to work on my relationship with anger. Can I count on you, or could you support me in this? Second question, do you get angry at all? 85% said yes. I think that's really healthy. And 15% of you said never. So connected to all that we talked through, look into your childhood, your relationship with anger, your parents' relationship with anger. Where is there shame or fear about it? So next one, do you feel embarrassed or ashamed about anger? Yeah. And 39% of you said, oh God, I feel like the worst person. Again, if that happens, sit with your shame. And as I said before, shame is one of the hardest emotions to process, but it's really so much simpler to feel something through rather than try some crazy process. Use a little bit of breath work to allow yourself to get out of your head, connect to a situation of shame. If it helps you, put on some music, and then just sit with the emotion. Just sit there, feel it, let your emotions come up. Yeah, let your tears flow or whatever needs to happen. And I really don't want to give you one specific thing to do, because I think every person is different. Some people have a very strong mental control. They will need a little bit more of breath work or any technique to get them out of your head. Whilst others who are very in touch with what they feel have an easier way of just sitting down and processing and just giving attention to that emotion and to that part of you. So find out, experiment what works for you best. So back to the question, do you feel embarrassed or ashamed about anger? 39% said yes, and 61% said no, it's totally okay to get angry. So I'm glad, because this is quite a large number. This is where we want to get to, right? That it's okay to feel anger. And often in childhood, if anger was shameful, or there was just one person in the household that was allowed to get angry, or it caused you pain and fear to be with an angry person, then you will feel that anger is not okay. Yeah, although it really is okay to get angry. It's even healthy. So just examine that relationship. Maybe if you have a partner again or a friend, talk about how you have conflict and what is okay for you. If we look at Italians, yeah, they're always really loud. They always look like they're angry, but they're just talking very loud. So their capacity to hold big emotions is extensive, right? And so if they shout at each other, they will not feel bad about it. Yeah. So it depends on your relationship. If it's okay for you to get loud in a fight but stay respectful, then it's okay. If you're very sensitive and you feel like, oh my God, getting loud means we're breaking up or something, or there's a rupture in our relationship, this is something to look at, right? Because repair should always be possible when there's love and respect. Respect is a big word here, right? But if you experienced a childhood where there was conflict and emotional disconnect again and again without repair, that can mean as an adult, trying to avoid the conflict at all costs, because it means disconnection, it means loss, it means abandonment. Yeah, so look at this wound if this feels resonant for you as well. It did feel really resonant for me, and I had to work through a lot, and there's definitely still a little bit left where my avoidance pattern sometimes comes in, and I feel like if I now say what I feel, then there will be a disconnect on beyond repair. But it's important to acknowledge that and be aware of it and make a different decision, right? That's how we shift old patterns, feeling it through and making a different decision. Okay. And then we have, do you know how to process your anger? 34% said yes, and it really helps, so I'm glad you're well equipped. 11% say I try, but it just never really works. So we've got a lot of content here for you in this episode. 14% say no, it feels overwhelming. So for you, it might be good to get somebody to work through this with, hand in hand, to feel supported. And 40% said, I just get angry and then I try to think positive. So there's an avoidance pattern, right? So you know what to do from this episode. Okay, were you allowed to get angry as a child? So 6% said, yeah, my parents just let me get it out. 6% guys. Yeah, that tells you a lot. Not that many people. 34% said, oh God, no. Being angry was not allowed. 34%. Look at your shame pattern there. Or look at your relationship to shame, if there's any shame connected to getting angry as a child. What were the consequences? 26% said it wasn't pretty, but no major consequences. So for you, it's not beyond repair. There's conflict. It's okay. Shit happens, sort of, right? So that's a pretty, that feels pretty balanced in a way. And 34% said, I don't remember. So if we don't remember, it's often a sign for either it wasn't important, yeah, and it can also be a sign for, yeah, a negative relationship to anger. So see if you can open that up a little more. And even if you cannot connect to your childhood and how anger played out for you and your parents, maybe just connect to how that feels for you. If you think of your childhood and anger, is there a positive feeling? Is there nothing? Is there like a fear or like a knot in your stomach or something coming up? Okay, it's interesting to observe that. And then the last question, if you try to process your anger, share what you do. So one of you said vocalize, write it out. Try not to share with the person I might be angry at, to reflect and calm. So I think that's a good start. But I would also say if you want to build safe and nurturing relationships, it's really important to tell the person that you're angry, because otherwise it can come out quite passive aggressively, or it can come out like they don't actually understand what makes you angry, what is okay for you and what isn't okay. So I think it's really important to actually let the other person know that you're in conflict with, that you are angry, because this way you understand each other so much better. This is how you build depth in relationships. Somebody else said journal. I think it's a good start, because if you're not in touch so much with your emotions or afraid of anger, write out, how do you feel, sensations in my body, this and this makes me angry because. Then somebody said breathwork, thanks to you. Oh, that's so sweet. I think breathwork is really good too. We don't want to use it to bypass our anger. We want to use it in a slow capacity to expand and feel that anger through, right? So if you want to use breath work, I would recommend you not to use it to bypass and be like, you know, like a lot of people do that. And yeah, it's not supportive, guys. It's, if we want to feel our emotion, we need to get slow and get intentional. So that means using your breath to make space in your body to feel more, okay? And invite your emotions up. One of you said, I was never allowed to be angry. So if you've never been allowed to be angry, then it's important that you allow yourself to get angry, okay? Again, in a safe, protected capacity without harming others or yourself. But ask yourself, how does it make me feel that I was not allowed to get angry? It's kind of like you were not allowed to speak your mind or say what doesn't work for you, right? Like journal out maybe, how does it make you feel to not be able to say and communicate your boundaries of what doesn't work. Somebody said boxing it out, so that's good. And then one of you said, if in public, usually shake in the bathroom or car or ask for a moment for myself to process. I think that's a great way to, take a moment for yourself and be respectful with yourself, but also with the other person, right? To not spill on anybody. And I think this is a good thing if you are with others and you don't have enough space to really process that anger. But I would also recommend that after this, when you have a moment to yourself, really sit with the anger and make sure you feel it through and understand what's going on. Then somebody said, feel, scream, punch, release as much as possible with body on pillows or air or mattress. So I think that's good to get it out of your system. But again, it's still important to sit with the emotion and understand what's below. Somebody said meditation, breathing, contact with nature. Then somebody said take a step back and analyze. So yes, again, analyzing is good, but I would say still the main thing here is feeling the feeling, processing the feeling, and the analyzing will come naturally. The realization often arrives once we've felt the feeling through and feel the wound behind it. Okay? And I also just want to add here that if you are in a situation where you are emotionally or physically unsafe and exposed to anger, please find your local support line for domestic abuse and type into Google victim support domestic abuse and then put your country and city, and you should find a number there. So just know you're not alone and you can ask for help, okay? I just find important to mention this just in case one of you is in this situation right now. So currently there's a lot of war energy in the world, right? And that can feel really triggering to witness. And we can also feel angry, sad, desperate, helpless in these situations where we may be far removed and feel like, what can we contribute to this? And if you are in the middle of it, I'm really feeling for you and I send you a lot of love, because this cannot be easy. It's not easy from afar, from a safe place. So therefore, what I do in those situations where I feel sort of helpless of what can I contribute to a betterment, I look at where I'm at war in my life. And that may feel like, what? Where am I at war? I'm not at war anywhere. But, there's those little things where we fight internally with ourselves, where we talk really badly with ourselves, where we're really harsh internally. And this is a kind of war within us, right? And I always feel like what happens on the macro level is a reflection of what happens within us, especially if we are heavily triggered by that situation. So I always choose to look inside, and also this time I looked inside and I did find places where I feel at war with maybe other people or with myself, and it's a really good exercise to look at those emotions and sit with them, process what's behind it, because I really believe that blaming and pointing fingers is not taking us to a better world or a better solution. I think we need to do better than that. And the first step that we can do is within us. Finding a way to understand the wounding within us, feel the wounding within us, and then in some way clean and heal the wounds within us. I think that can create a lot of impact, especially in your daily environment, right? And that makes waves onto the world. So while editing this episode, I decided to create a anger meditation for you to help you get to your anger, feel your anger, release your anger. So I hope that helps and supports you. If you want to check out the meditation, you can click on the link underneath here, or you can just follow to the next video. It's on my YouTube channel, so you can simply access it there, okay? Try it out, let it support you, whether you are in an anger moment, trying the meditation, or in a moment where you just have space to decide, okay, it's time to look into my anger and feel what is there, if there's something there, and what comes up. If you're not successful in the first moment, don't worry, it's normal to feel resistance. Just come back to it a few times and see what it can do for you, okay? Whew, we made it to the end of the episode. I know it's been a deep one, a long one. I hope you realize something, please share with me what's come up for you. I hope it helped you in any capacity for me to share my own experience, my professional experience. And I have to say it's been not so easy to record this. There was always something coming in between, and I think it's just because somewhere in my subconscious it still feels like such a vulnerable topic to share and exposing in some way. But I wish, an episode like this would exist, so that's why I created it, and I really hope at some capacity it helps you. Feel free to share with anybody that you think may benefit from it. Like, subscribe, the whole stuff, so I can create more of this for you. That's it. It definitely helped me to process how I feel about anger creating this episode. So thank you for your interest in it and participating in the survey on Instagram. I think I'm going to do this now more often for topics that I share with you, because it's so important for me to understand what you're looking for, what you feel, what you're going through, so that I can share value with you. Okay? I love you. Thank you so much. Wherever you are right now, you've got this. If you're looking for someone to work with through that anger, you can take a look down below at my website. And I will have also some online breathwork group sessions come up where you can also join and process some anger. And I'd be so curious to hear where you're at and how you feel about anger and how you process it. So drop it below or DM me on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. You're not alone. We're all in this together, and I hope to see you soon.